Welcome back. You're watching Here and Now. We're talking about rape culture in Kenya, how it's handled by the media, by the justice system. So let's introduce our panelists to you right now. I'll ask them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into a conversation about that. So we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Janet. My name is Wangu Kanja from the Wangu Kanja Foundation, and we also convene the Survivors of Sexual Violence in Kenya network, and we work towards eliminating or ending sexual violence in Kenya.
My name is Linah Kitala. I'm a radio presenter and a producer, and I'm also a rape survivor.
My name is Libby Ndambo. I am a musician, a singer-songwriter.
Okay. Maybe you could start with you, Wangu, and give a context about what is accepted as sexual violence in Kenya and who defines this.
So we have a law that guides Kenya as a country, but also our justice system on how to address issues of sexual violence. And it has given a description of over 23 different cases or cases of sexual violence. And it goes into detail what it entails, and also who's the survivor and who's the perpetrator. And one of the things that I should actually mention is anyone who's below 18, as per the law of Kenya, the Sexual Offences Act of 2006, anyone who's below 18 cannot consent on sexual relationship. That's a minor, that's a child. Anyone who's above 18 can consent, but they have the right to say no if they feel uncomfortable, whether it's a man or woman. And if you go ahead and coerce them or force them to have any sexual relationship, then you will have raped that person because they have not consented to having a sexual relationship with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for emphasizing those important points. Linah, if I can come to you and share what you can about your story, and more than that, tell us about how your case was handled.
I was actually telling Libby how it's now 2 years and still I've not gotten justice for what happened to me. And I was telling her the only comfortable bit about going to the police station and explaining to them what had happened to me was having my parents and my neighbors around me at that point to express to them what I was feeling or what had happened. And how the lady who was at the station, how she questioned me and everything, that was the only point that I felt at peace. But everything else in relation to the case, it hasn't gone anywhere, basically. For my story, it was just a normal day, a normal Friday. I can remember the day and the month and the time because it was a very special month for me. It was my birthday month, so I was very excited. I was heading home, a road that I have traveled for many years since I was a teenager. And I was walking home, and I realized that there was someone who was walking behind me. So my gut instinct felt like, should I run? Should I still walk towards the gate? But I had walked that road so many times with people behind me, so I brushed that gut feeling and I continued walking. When I reached just right at our gate and I'm about to take the keys, I looked behind because I figured maybe it's one of my neighbors. So I was like, hi, and that's when the guy jumped me. He jumped me, he hit my head on the ground and I passed out and I regained conscious again, and then he choked the life out of me. But yeah, so it was not an interesting. Sorry, okay. I'm getting all emotional.
No, I don't. You don't have to recount anything else, yes. Linah. I'm very sorry that happened to you. You talked about the fact that you only felt a sense of, I think you used the word comfort when you were surrounded by your family, went to the police station, were received by a female officer. I believe that's what you said. Yeah. And then you've talked about the fact that years later, nothing has come of the case. And I know later on, even with Wangu, we'll talk about how these cases are handled and what needs to change. What are you currently doing to try and pursue justice for your case? Have you gotten to a point where you're saying there's really no need?
I actually got to that point. I think when last year ended, I literally told my parents, there's no need to pursue this. I think I just need to seek myself healing, until Libby approached me and she was like, I have this burden, I have this project I want to do, and I really, really want you to be part of it. And when she came and shared that your story is also in this project, so I felt the urge that I think even if justice may not be found through the judicial system, perhaps I can give someone a voice by sharing my story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Libby, you know, we spoke and you talked about just what Linah has said, that you really had this burden. You were hearing this story from a lot of friends. You were seeing it in your surroundings. What did you then do with that, and how are you sharing these stories?
So I'm a musician. I felt very weak when my friends would tell me that they've experienced something so horrible and I can't do anything. I can't fight for them physically, you know. I can't go after these people. I can't go to the courts and fight for them. So I called up a friend and I told her, we have art. She's an actor. So I told her, we have art. And art is a very powerful weapon that can be used to talk about issues. And so we challenged each other to use our art. So a month or 2 weeks later, I walked into studio and I was recording my album. And I was so burdened, and I just sang out a song. And so it took about 16 months of working on the song to be able to tell the stories of rape survivors and to seek justice for them from society. And the song is called Rise Again. I released it in May this year. And the song just talks about what a rape survivor is auctioned to. But also it's a song of hope that at the end that I will rise again, because I'm a Christian. I believe that God, the author and perfecter of our faith, he restores us to health. But just because there's God doesn't mean someone deserves to be raped. The song addresses very many aspects about religion and how we hide behind religion. Talks about the justice system and how people find it easier to blame the survivor as opposed to focusing on the perpetrator. And so Rise Again project, and it became a campaign with 5 parts: blogging, events, the song itself, and now social media outreach and talking to people in different forums. Yes.
And it's incredible work, and we'll come
Thank
to
you.
what's next a little later on. Wangu, she's just raised the point, and you raised it earlier. The perpetrator, sometimes maybe the focus on that isn't as heavy as it ought to be. Tell us your thoughts about that and how the justice system and even community handle perpetrators.
So most of the time when a person goes through any form of sexual violence, the first thing people shift the blame to the victim, which we are not supposed to do, because it's someone, an individual who violated another individual. So we should focus on the person who violated the individual and not the person who was violated. Because at the end of the day, we need to hold that specific individual or a group of people accountable. And the number one thing to actually restore dignity to all survivors of sexual and gender-based violence is actually helping them access justice, but not justice, but in a timely manner. When it takes 10 years, you're re-traumatizing that person over and over again. If each and every single time she has to go to court, today it's a mention, tomorrow it's a mention, the next day, and you're facing your perpetrator. So you're re-traumatizing that person over and over and over again. And it gets to a point where the person actually gives up. So I hear you when you say you're frustrated, because when it happened to me in 2002, the number one thing I decided to do is not pursue justice. Because the reception I got from the first person that I actually told that I was raped was, "Are you married?" And I was like, so what has marriage got to do with anything? Yeah. But their perception is, as a woman, if you're raped, then it's like you're tainted. So your significant other or spouse or partner should actually just leave you and move on to someone else. And it happens to both men and women, where a man will be raped and they go to disclose to their loved one and they leave them, saying, you're a weak man. And that's not the case. The person did not call upon themselves to be raped. It's someone who, actually maybe even a total stranger, that raped them either from their way to, from work or to work, or in an office, because it happens both in public and private spaces. And perpetrators are both men and women, but majority are men, men who rape other men. And it doesn't choose which culture, religion, status that you're coming from. It affects anyone and everyone. And it doesn't only affect the person who has gone through the violation, but also the family. So it's a violation that actually we need to address as a social issue than an issue that just affects women and girls.
Okay. I'm sorry that that happened to you. And you mentioned that it does need to be, that we need to address it as both men and women who are survivors. We did try to get men to come on the show, but it proved to be really difficult. What's been your experience trying to work through justice and trauma with men, and how then can we also create the kind of community that allows them to feel like there's a safe space where they can say this happened to me?
So I think we need to do a lot of education and information sharing, because we've been socialized, especially men, when they are growing up, they are told, you need to be strong. A man doesn't cry. A man needs to provide for their family, but you're not given the formula. So you end up every step of the way when you're growing up, it's a hassle. It's a process where you have to always show that you're a man. So if it happens to you, then it becomes even more difficult to come out and say, I was raped as a man, because everyone will look down on you and say you're a weak man. Yet, the likelihood of you being in a situation where there are like 10 men and then they gang rape you, you don't have power to control anything at that particular time. So we need to actually create a safe environment where we talk about sex, sexuality, and sexual violence, where we give information, like all media houses get to understand the impact of sexual violence so that they can share information, where to access services, what is needed for a person to do, but also how to preserve evidence. Because at the end of the day, if you need to access justice, you actually need to present yourself at a health facility, get a medical report, take that medical report to a police station, and then report the incidents.
When we do come back, I really do want us to get into what do you do? What are the steps that are taken, even though the systems may fail us, just understanding for somebody to bring their case forth and to have a case that can get to the courts and succeed. What are the steps that one needs to take? So we'll come back and talk about that in a bit on Here and Now. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Here and Now. We're having a conversation about sexual and gender-based violence. It's how it's handled at the judiciary level, at the police station, at the health facilities, and by the community, by the media, and what we need to do better. And I think I can open this up to everyone, because Linah, you had a case, you took it forward, and at some point it got stuck. Something went wrong somewhere. Can you talk about where the roadblock started, and then Wangu can talk about exactly what's supposed to happen?
Let me first start by how I handled my situation when it happened, because no one thinks they'll ever get raped. First and foremost, it was something that happened that I had never thought would happen to me. You'll watch in movies, or as I said, because of being a presenter and a radio producer, you'll do interviews of people who've gone through it, but not necessarily think you will end up being a victim. So for me, when it happened to me, at first, I didn't have even the strength to want to talk about it or even go to the police station, because I really felt ashamed. But I remembered for me to find justice, or for someone else to also find the courage to do it, I have to at least do something about it. So for me, I first went to the police station, reported it. Then I was told for them to pursue the case, I have to come with a report from hospital. So I went to Nairobi Women's. They did the checkup. They gave me, what do you call it? The form I filled, and then they gave me, they did the checkups, and then now they gave the report of who I am, what had happened, of the incident, and then I took that back to the police station. Then at the police station, they asked me, what did you have during that day? So I gave the clothes that I had. I gave, what's it called? They told me, did they do anything else? I told them the guy stole my phone. So they told me, do you have the number? I gave them the number. I gave them whatever they needed to track the phone. And after 2 or 3 months of trying to follow up from then, that's where the case just went mute. Yeah.
Okay, and it's been 2 years, and there's still been nothing that's moved.
Still there's nothing more than we are pursuing this case.
Right.
Yeah.
Wangu, is that something that you hear often, just in terms of, first of all, it sounds like she went through the due process of the, getting the health checkup, going to the police. So where is it that the systems get it wrong in Kenya? Is it the lack of information, the ignorance? Is there just lack of the right facilities?
So one, when it comes to gross human rights violation, we need to actually consider a specialized unit to investigate and actually document cases of sexual and gender-based violence, and that's missing. So you get police who are in general duty are the ones who are manning the desks. In other police stations, we have gender desks, and some are manned, some are not manned. But we are recommending to Ministry of Interior and National Coordination to set up a sex crimes unit where you will have dedicated police officers, both men and women, actually handling cases of sexual violence, because then they will not be removed from that specific department to go somewhere else to look to investigate murder or robbery, because this one is like a just by the way kind of thing. And then two, the resources to even investigate. We don't have cameras everywhere, so if she did not look at the perpetrator, how else do you get to identify who the person who attacked you? So we need to have a lot of things in place to ensure that we help survivors access justice, because majority of them will take the initiative to actually go to hospital and get a medical report and the PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis. But thereafter, then the system actually disappoints them. And it has, we've made some baby steps in the right directions, but I think we need to do more. The government needs to invest more so that we are able to even track serial rapists. Right now we can't, because we don't have the
database. Okay.
So we need to actually do more towards addressing sexual and gender-based violence, because for her to access justice, that needs to be in place.
Right.
I genuinely think also the people who are manning the desks need to have soft skills and counseling skills, because at that time, not many people have the privilege of having family around them. There are a couple of people who now doing this project who now share their stories. They were in a new place where they didn't know anyone. And so when they go alone, the hostility they find, and I don't even quote unquote blame the police that much, because this person has been manning maybe a desk and dealing with someone who's stolen money and dealing with wife battery and dealing with all manner of cases, and then someone who is emotionally scrumming, they don't know how to detox what has just happened to now deal with this one with soft skills and then now come back to that mess. And that's why it's very important to have one unit that is dedicated and they're actually trained with counseling skills, so that even as the person waits for them to be heard, they know what to do and what to say, what words to use that are not hostile, or how to phrase statements that the person doesn't feel like it's my fault.
Right.
You know, you can ask a question, what were you doing? That in itself assumes that I was doing something that warranted. But if you ask, how was your day like on that day? You know, that's a different approach. So
Just
they need to
allowing them to feel like it's a safe space where they can talk about
I was
it.
actually telling Libby that when you look at gender violence or rape, for instance, people don't consider it as huge as murder. Like someone shot so and so, then that's huge. But someone got raped, yeah, maybe they did something. Maybe they were not wearing the right clothes. Maybe they put themselves in a situation that led to them getting raped. But one thing as a survivor I can tell you, being raped and someone actually taking a gun and shooting you is one in the same, because they literally strip you, like, yes, of your dignity and everything that was dear to you. They literally take it, not just from you, but even for the people around you.
Yeah. You alluded to this when we spoke earlier on, and maybe you can comment, is there's also the way, you know, rape and gender-based violence are talked about in the media, in articles, and comment on that and maybe shed some light on what skills does the media also need to be equipped with when they're covering stories or talking about them, that also is done with some sensitivity and just having the sense not to downplay some of the issues like we've seen played out. I know you commented about that earlier.
What I've seen, especially the media, is you take the story with a laxness. You know, it's like you're reporting about the tax evasion cases or someone doing corruption. When you're dealing with something like rape, one, the story of the survivor is their truth. It has to be told as they tell it. So sometimes you find when maybe in a newspaper article, they change the wordings and then they put so much of the victim's story and then they kind of justify. So maybe talking about a lady, she had gone out and was doing this and she was drunk and she was, you know, so when you're giving the information about the lady, you're talking about, you're kind of justifying her actions. And then when you're talking about the perpetrator, you say that they've denied the claims, or the man is a businessman, a well-renowned businessman from this place. Such positive attributes to the perpetrator, but such negative attitudes towards the survivor. And so what it does as a reader or someone who's listening, what they're already pre-exposed to being defensive to the perpetrator. And which is wrong. At the end of the day, the media is supposed to be the middle ground, telling both stories with its truth. We cannot frame it in a way that makes the perpetrator look much better. Or how we, like the news articles, in the United States, a serial rapist hung himself a few days ago. And what they've been talking about him is billionaire so-and-so. You know, when R. Kelly's story comes out, we're talking about renowned musician, famous musician. We have such positive attributes. Revolution of R&B belonged to this man. But when we're talking about the survivor, we're talking about some lady from somewhere.
Very good point. Why do you think that is?
So one, socialization, but also for a very long time, the structures that we have in Kenya, but also around Africa, our structures are very patriarchal. So it's the man first, the women after. And looking at media, they influence the way people think. So when you write a 12-year-old had sex with a 69-year-old, this is a child. Under the law, it's an offense where a minor cannot consent to having a sexual relationship with an adult. So you should put your focus on the 69-year-old man who actually violated a 12-year-old, because it's a crime. And also, I would ask media, different media houses, to do their investigation, background checks on the different cases of sexual violence. Because the way, as she said, you portray the person who has been violated as a person who has committed the crime. Yet, we need to hold the perpetrator accountable at the end of the day. But also, media houses to investigate and interrogate what government is doing. Do we have post-rape care services at the lowest level, the health center, where the mama in the village, rural home, can actually go to access services? And if they are not available, what are they willing to do for that person to be able to go to a level 3 or 5 to access services? So at the end of the day, it's about what are we committing to do, not as Wangu only, but as a family and as a community.
And as the government as well. Who
for
need
us,
to.
because government is you and me. It's not what we have in the offices. The people who have been employed is you and me. So for us, we are bringing survivors of sexual violence together so that we can have a voice and say enough is enough. We need men, women, and children being able to access services in a timely manner, but also ensuring that access to justice does not take 20 years for them. A year, 2 years at most. Then you stop re-victimizing or re-traumatizing the person.
I would love to say that as we say what media is portraying, the fact is the people who are in media are also the people who are in society. So what is society saying about rape? If we, like for instance, when Libby came and told me, oh, tomorrow there's an interview, will you kindly join me? At first I was hesitant because in my mind I'll be, what will people say? Will they think it's my fault that? Because most people will tend to ask, what was this person doing in order to get raped? But it's not about what that person was doing. The fact is someone chose to do something to this person without consent.
Okay. Just before we go, I know, Wangu, you said that there's some resources or details or contacts that you have. We'll get that and hopefully put those up on the screen. Just it's important that people have also access to information where they can seek counsel. But I wanted, before you go, because you talked about being a person of faith, I wanted to just, for you to quickly touch on what you think the role of religious houses are as well in creating a safe space where survivors feel like they can be open about their experiences and not feel judged.
Religious houses, for especially Christianity, we are to share the heart of God. And the heart of God is plain and simple, that all those who are weary can come to him. So we need to have support groups, even in religious centers that are for rape survivors. Same way we have AA meetings, that we need to have that. A place where that they can receive counseling, because counseling also in itself is an expensive endeavor in itself. So the church needs to come hands-on and also make a stand. Very many times during the political things that happen, politicians go to churches to make a stand. Why can't the church go into society and make a stand against toxic masculinity or toxic sexual traits?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, yes.
And also to add on that, is the church even ready to speak about sex? And is it ready to speak about sexual violence? Because you cannot come to the aid of those who you have not yet acknowledged are in your midst or are suffering in your midst. So if for me, church is also not a safe space, or whichever other religion someone identifies with, if that religion is not a safe space for them to also go and speak out what they're going through, at the end of the day, no one will actually rise and say, I've gone through this.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing your stories. And thank you for just wanting to stand firm and pursue justice. And I wish you all the best with that. We will share the contacts that Wangu will share a little later. Libby, thank you as well for using your art and your voice for this conversation. We'll be right back with my final thought. Regardless of age or gender, the impact of sexual violence goes far beyond physical injuries. The trauma can never be minimized. As a society, we need to question our systems, but most importantly, we need to question ourselves. If you're watching and you're affected by sexual violence or know somebody who is, here's some resources that are going to appear on your screens where you can reach out for help, and please use them. I'm Janet Mbugua. Thank you for watching Here and Now. Thank you to our amazing panelists today for sharing their thoughts and their experiences and their views. Let's keep this conversation going online as well. Use the hashtag HereAndNowKE on Twitter. We'll see you again next time.
I was late from work. The street lights were off. Then you grabbed me from the back and you ripped off my cloth. Please stop, let me go. Oh God, make it stop. Just make it stop. Just got into bed and I kissed you goodnight. Said, baby, I told you I didn't want anything just for tonight. I'm begging, stop, let me go. I'm crying, stop.
This space can hear me say no. But do you even understand what that means anymore? Too blind to see my pain, hardened heart, driven by your desires. You covered my mouth and crippled me with silent whispers. To you, it was just a few seconds. But in those few seconds, you auctioned me to a broken system that finds it easier to crucify me than hold you accountable, insisting that I asked for it, blaming my short skirt or late nights. But if only they understood that misplacing the blame only empowers you. You auctioned me to a system that hides behind religion, defending your name and honor, yet the holy book is centered on justice for the oppressed. I know healing is inevitable because the author and perfecter of my faith will restore me to health and he will heal the wounds. But regardless, no one deserves to be raped. So this is me. This is me waging war, and I will not be silenced. Because I'm no longer your victim, I'm a survivor.
I will rise again in spite of all the pain. I will rise again in spite of all